Right, order, order. We start with questions. Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport, John Lamont.
Question number 1.
Mr. Speaker, these are devolved responsibilities, tourism levies, but obviously we want to watch what happens in Scotland and Wales with close interest. One of my main hopes is not only to increase the number of international visitors to the UK, but to make sure that more and more visitors not only come to London and the South East, but travel across the whole of the United Kingdom.
John Lamont.
Well, I'm grateful to the Minister for that response, but imposing taxes on tourists will only discourage people from enjoying the best of what the Scottish Borders has to offer and what Scotland has to offer. With many small rural businesses struggling to sustain themselves, I fear this extra tax which the Scottish Government is proposing to impose will be the last straw for many of them. So does the Minister share my concern about the impact that this will have on tourism in Scotland, and will the Government undertake an impact study on the effect this tax will have on tourism, not just in Scotland, but across the UK?
I'm sorry that the member, despite having, I think, been a member of the Scottish Parliament, doesn't seem to understand the basis of devolution. This is a matter for the Scottish Government to decide, and we want to have a very positive relationship with the Scottish administration and, for that matter, the administration in Wales. Of course we're going to look at this. We have no plans in the, for the UK Government to introduce visitor levies at the moment, though, of course, there are potential benefits that might accrue to local communities if you could get that right. But I think the idea of us investigating what the Scottish Government is doing would be completely wrong.
Jamie Stone.
Number 2, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Thank you. Can I thank him for his question? This Government is taking a fresh approach to our relationship, both with the Scottish Government and with our cultural partners across Scotland. We're seeking a far more consistent and constructive relationship than the previous Government. I'm pleased to tell him that the Prime Minister last week convened the first ever Council of Nations and Regions, and this Government is putting the creative industries in every nation and region at the heart of our economic strategy.
Jamie Stone.
I wholeheartedly welcome that answer, because if you think about the potential of Scotland, if I was to say Traitors filmed in Ardoscarton, my constituency, you see what I'm talking about. But there is no doubt about it. I take the point that it's devolved, but Mr Angus Robertson seems to flip-flop when it comes to funding of the arts. So I'd be grateful for everything the Secretary of State can do in terms of getting Netflix or whoever to look hard at the Highlands.
Well, he's absolutely right to draw attention to the huge cultural assets that we have in Scotland. I was very pleased to meet with my counterpart in the Scottish Government when I visited the Edinburgh Fringe over the summer, and I know from the International Investment Summit that the Government has convened earlier this week that partners like Netflix and many other international investors see the enormous value of Scotland and the attraction of investing there. This Government will obviously do everything that we can to support that and to put rocket boosters under the creative industries in Scotland.
Louise Jones.
Question 3, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This Government is committed to providing high-quality, inclusive facilities that provide opportunities for everyone to get active and healthier, and that's why we're investing £123 million into facilities across the UK through our multi-sports Grassroots facilities programme.
Louise Jones.
Access to these facilities is vital for the mental health and community cohesion, and no more so than in the small towns and villages that make up my constituency of North East Derbyshire. Does the Minister agree that even in places like this we must have equal access to these facilities?
I completely agree with my honourable friend, and I was pleased to visit her constituency a few months ago. I represent a very similar area, a collection of towns and villages, and wherever it is across the country, we want to make sure that communities have access to local facilities. It is so important to get people active, and in particular for mental health and well-being.
Chair of the Select Committee, Dame Caroline Downey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and she'll know that grassroots sports venues play such a key role in improving the nation's health. The UK are going to host the T20 Women's World Cup in 2026, and of course cricket is joining the Olympic family of sports in 2028. The previous government committed £35 million investment into 16 grassroots cricket hubs, cricket domes. Can she commit to this government to fulfilling that promise, please?
Well, I'm grateful to the Chair of the Select Committee for her important question. I was pleased to meet with the ECB a few weeks ago, and I'll be actually doing a visit in my own constituency with them tomorrow. We absolutely see the benefit of cricket and indeed all sports across the country. I'm obviously not in a position to make spending commitments ahead of the spending review.
Gordon.
Well, Mr. Speaker.
I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman for his question. As I set out in the previous answer, the government is investing £123 million through football partners in grassroots facilities up and down the country.
Tom Gordon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I recently visited Knaresborough Town AFC in my constituency and met with fantastic people who do more than just football on the ground. They share their club facilities with groups like Rainbow Care Dementia that provides a lifeline to other people, not just those interested in football. Due to the weather, their pitch is often waterlogged and there's a lack of 3G provision in the area. Will the Minister meet with me to talk about how we can do more to support them and hopefully get a pitch down the line?
Well, I'm really grateful to the gentleman for his question. I'm really pleased to hear he visited his local club. I'd be delighted to meet with him. Ahead of that meeting, though, I will ask my officials to link him up with the Football Foundation, who obviously support grassroots communities to get new pitches. And, of course, I pay tribute to all the volunteers that he refers to for the fantastic work that they do in the community.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Blyth Spartans in my constituency is arguably the most famous non-league club in the UK. Arguably. They now are up for sale, with the current chairman failing to deliver on promises made and engage transparently and openly with his supporters. Does my honourable friend agree with me that non-league football clubs are at the heart of the communities and that engagement with supporters is critical to the ongoing survival?
I'm incredibly grateful to the honourable gentleman for his question. I completely agree. I think now he's put it in Hansard, perhaps they are the most well-known in the country, and I echo his comments about fan involvement at every level of the football pyramid, and indeed in grassroots football as well.
Max Wilkinson, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From grassroots to professional, the number of women's teams has grown by almost double, in fact more than double, over the past 7 years. Now, Cheltenham Town women have a thriving team with a junior and adult section. Sadly, one place above them in the table this season is Lewis FC, and they are running the Equal FA Cup campaign. Now, does the Minister agree with me that it is time for equality of prize money across the men's and the women's FA Cups?
I'm incredibly grateful to the honourable gentleman for such an important question. The government is fully committed to supporting and growing women's sport and ensuring that women's sport is on an equal footing to men's sport. The ambition of equal prize money where possible across sport is absolutely the right one. I know that the FA took steps last season to double the prize fund for the Women's FA Cup, and we'll be paying close attention to see what happens next.
Question number 5, Mr. Speaker.
I'm grateful to her in particular for all the work that she's done in her constituency to support young people over very many years. It is a source of national shame that under the last government, youth funding decreased by 73%, one of the deepest cuts made to any of our public services, and more, that there was no real strategy for a generation of young people. This government is determined to grip it to ensure that young people in towns like Grimsby have the opportunity that they deserve.
I thank the Secretary of State for that answer. A shining example of youth services and their positive impact is the Haven Centre in Osborne Street in my constituency of Great Grimsby and Cleethorpes. Here, a dedicated team offers diversionary activities through sports and crafts, as well as giving essential mentoring and support. Since opening, the Haven has played a really important role in reducing antisocial behaviour, with reported incidents down by 35% in the town centre over the last year. Would she join me in commending the staff at the Haven and all of the youth providers across Grimsby and Cleethorpes and recognise the vital role that they play in providing safety for young people, as well as giving them access to new skills and facilities that they otherwise wouldn't have?
I'd be delighted to pay tribute to the youth workers up and down this country who have done incredible work, being a lifeline for young people in what has been a very bleak landscape for too long. I was also very pleased to work with the East Marsh United group in her constituency, alongside her and the incredible work that she's done to support the community over many years in order to facilitate the onside youth club, of which we have a fantastic example too in Wigan, and I'm very much looking forward to working with her to develop this work.
Chorley. Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the other Member of Parliament for a bit of Grimsby, I share my MP's support for the excellent work that is carried on in the area. But the Secretary of State rightly in my opinion, criticises the last government for reducing resources made available to the youth sector. Can she reassure me that this government will actually increase those resources?
We're absolutely determined to grip this issue, and one of the things that we discovered when we opened the book as a new government is that there are several sources of funding within my department and across government, but there is no strategy for youth in government at all. We are determined to set that right. We will develop and co-produce a strategy for a generation of young people alongside them, and working with the incredible youth workers at the Haven, at the on-side youth zones and others in Chorley and many other places in order to support a generation to succeed.
Sarah Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 6, please.
I've had lots and lots of meetings with the creative industries, and they've raised AI at every single meeting. Let me be absolutely clear. Human creativity deserves remuneration. Wherever we end up, the rights of artists, musicians, publishers, journalists need to be protected, and we need to garner the very significant benefits that artificial intelligence can bring.
Sarah Russell.
AI-generated creations that mimic real people, deepfakes, can lead to financial and reputational damage for musicians and other creators. But as the domestic violence charity Refuge pointed out last year, the most common generated AI deepfakes are non-consensual sexual depictions of women. How does the government plan to ensure that creators, as well as women and girls, are adequately protected from the misappropriation of their voice, image, name and likeness?
Minister. I'm really glad that she's raised this. It's a very important issue. It affects many people. The legislation in this area is not easy. We are looking at it. In the words of Stephen Sondheim, art isn't easy and the legislation isn't easy either. We are, however, determined. It's already a criminal offence to share an intimate image without consent, whether it's real or synthetically generated. And we will also deliver on our manifesto commitment to ban the creation of sexually explicit deep fakes.
Jim Shannon.
The real thing. Mr. Speaker, can I thank the Minister very much for his response to that there. The creative industries in Northern Ireland Strangford are very important, and the Honourable Lady from Congleton has brought up a very important point. I think when it comes to responding to the Honourable Lady for her specific ask, it would be important for us in Northern Ireland to have similar consideration of what the Right Honourable Member has referred to. Has he had yet an opportunity to talk to the relevant Minister at the Northern Ireland Assembly to ensure that anything that happens here to protect women and ladies can also happen in Northern Ireland? Thank you.
He makes a very good point, which is that although some of the areas that we talk about in this session are of course devolved, we want to make sure that the whole of the UK moves forward in the same direction, and in this particular area it is something that I am keen to talk to my counterpart in Northern Ireland about.
Shadow Minister Dr Luke Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's an honour to stand here for the first time. I have to admit it's not the way I pictured it. I will do my best not to be a pain in your neck while I'm here. In a nutshell, the creative industries are worried that the government's going to essentially give away the IP. I'm pleased to hear his response from the other side that that's a growing concern. But a concern was raised by the chair of the Select Committee after comments from DSIT Minister. So with that in mind, will the Minister confirm that he won't give away the IP through an exemption, that he won't implement the EU's approach given its deficits, and will he commit to holding a summit between the tech and creative industries to explore licensing and other models?
Look, it's absolutely essential that we protect intellectual property. It's one of the key things that we as a country have to sell. And we've already had meetings, 2 meetings meeting with creative industries and with tech companies. We are keen to move forward, but it's good to welcome him to his décolleté first appearance. I would just gently push back to say that the previous government in this area, I think, had embraced Bucks Fizz more than anything else. Don't let your indecision take you from behind, because they managed to do absolutely nothing in this territory. We are determined to get to a proper resolution which satisfies both the needs of the creative industries and of AI.
Conor Naismith.
Question number 7, Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Grassroots sports clubs are at the heart of communities up and down the country. We know just how important they are, which is why we are committed to continuing to support high-quality, inclusive facilities to get people more active.
Colin Naismith.
Crewe and Nantwich Athletics Club celebrated its 50th anniversary this year and is home to the only competitive standard athletics track in South Cheshire. However, the track is in desperate need of improvements so the club can continue to flourish and support the young people who use these facilities. So will the Minister meet with me to discuss what support might be available to deliver these crucial improvements?
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for his important question. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate Crewe and Nantwich Athletics Club on half a century. What a great achievement. Sports clubs like these are crucial in helping our young people pursue their sporting passions. I would be happy to meet with my honourable friend to discuss this, but in the meantime, I will ask my department to link up the club with England Athletics and other bodies for further discussion on the support available.
Yuan Yang.
Question number 8, Mr Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Can I thank her for raising this incredibly important issue? Football is one of our greatest exports and a source of joy to people across the country. But for too long, the robust protections haven't been in place to make sure that every town, village and city can share in that success. Can I take this opportunity to pay tribute to the former Sports Minister, Dame Tracy Crouch, for the work that she did leading the fan-led review of football. This government has committed to the Football Governance Bill in the King's Speech and expect to introduce it shortly.
Randy Yang.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I associate myself with that tribute and thank the Minister for her reply. My constituency of Earley and Woodley is the proud home of Reading Football Club, who managed to stay up last season against the odds, but has been a victim of financial mismanagement by absent owners. Yeah. We desperately need the government's football governance bill, which will set up a regulator to safeguard clubs like Reading and prevent future abuses. Will the Minister meet with local fans and myself to discuss what we can do to protect the club?
The Sports Minister would be absolutely delighted to do so. And can I pay tribute to her and the 3 Reading MPs for the work that they're doing in order to protect something that is so incredibly important to their town. I know from my own personal experience in Wigan with the work that we had to do to save Wigan Athletic that when a football club is under threat from mismanagement or poor ownership, it is absolutely devastating for generations of fans for whom this is part of their civic inheritance. We're looking forward to introducing the football bill without any further delay and working with her and her colleagues to make sure that we introduce the strongest possible protections to put fans back at the heart of the game where they belong.
Jim Dix.
Mr Speaker, question number 9.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. With your permission, I'll take questions 9 and 11 together. This government is committed to strengthening the protections to ensure that people can continue to enjoy gambling as a pastime without the harms that can ensue from problem gambling. We have a dedicated Minister for Gambling, Baroness Twycross, and she has met with representatives from across industry and those affected by problem gambling in order to seek the widest range of views in order to ensure that this government has a robust policy in place.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for her answer? I know many of us in this House will have encountered harrowing stories from constituents of the devastating impact of gambling suicide. The Gambling Commission estimate that 2.5% of the population meet the threshold to be categorised as suffering from problem gambling and needing NHS treatment. And in my constituency of Dartford, we are considered a high problem gambling area, meaning we have a high number of people who meet the threshold. Can I ask the Minister if steps are being taken to progress towards an independent statutory levy on the industry to fund gambling treatment and independent information that so many people urgently need?
As a government, we're committed to reviewing all of the available evidence and listening to the experiences of members of Parliament like him who have first-hand experience of this in their own constituencies in order to ensure that we strike the right balance between ensuring that this industry, which does bring joy to many, many people, can continue to thrive, but that we have the most robust protections in place to prevent problem gambling. I'll update the House soon on the government's strategy on this. Baroness Twycross will of course be happy to discuss this with MPs from every side of the House who I know have personal experience of this and evidence that we will want to consider.
Len Stewart.
Mr Speaker, I'm sure the Minister will join me in praising local community groups like those in Ayrcarrick and Cumnock that support people facing problems with gambling. In a time when financial resources are limited and as a result of the black hole left by the Conservative government, has the new government considered the fiscal cost for society of gambling, and in particular online gambling, which is a higher risk of harm?
We're very aware of the issues that she raised, and we would obviously be very pleased to discuss those with her as part of ensuring that we have the most robust protections in place, particularly when it comes to online gambling. I do, though, want to say to the House that in addition to being acutely aware of the problems that can ensue from gambling, we are also very aware that this is an industry that brings joy to many, many people. And in particular, over half of all adults have participated in some form of gambling in the last year. We know that it's a thorny issue that has to be grasped, and we are very, very committed to working with her and other colleagues in order to get this right.
Timothy.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The horse racing industry, which is a British success story, is dependent on income from responsible gambling, and I'm glad that the Secretary of State said what she said about those responsibly enjoying a flutter. This is nothing like some of the problem gambling that we see online, and the proportion of bets on horse racing that are deemed problematic is comparable to the proportion of problematic users of the National Lottery. So can the Secretary of State tell us what plans she has to reform the betting levy and the affordability checks that have been in train for some time?
I should tell the House that the Tote is headquartered in my constituency in Wigan, and as well as drawing attention to that, it also gives me an insight into the industry, which I've had a relationship with for very many years. There is a debate on horse racing next week in Westminster Hall on Thursday. This is an industry that is worth £4 billion to the UK economy, so it is certainly something that this government takes incredibly seriously. Baroness Twycross is currently having discussions with people, representatives from across the industry, and I'm sure she'd be delighted to also speak to my honourable friend to have those discussions as well.
Shadow Minister Dr Luke Evans.
Mr Speaker, no one wants to see people caught up in problem gambling, but equally no one wants to see businesses struggle and job losses. Even by the Secretary of State's own words, we want to see this industry thrive. Yet this week, this was threatened after it was rumoured the Treasury are planning a £3 billion tax raid. Now, that's already seen £3 billion wiped off the value of bookies. So, could the Secretary of State clarify, does she support the industry or does she support the Treasury? Did she raise her concerns about the rumour? And when will we see the gambling reforms be brought forward with a timetable this House can scrutinise?
I'd just gently say to the honourable gentleman that he should know, as we do, that you can't believe everything that you read in the papers. I think he will have heard from my previous answer that we are determined to strike the right balance. As I said to his colleague just a moment ago, we're aware of the value of this industry and the importance of it, not just to the UK economy, but to the joy that it brings to many, many people and the employment prospects that it offers to people in every nation and region of the United Kingdom. We are also very aware of the problems that can be caused by problem gambling, and as the previous government did, we're determined to talk to the widest range of partners to ensure that we strike the right balance to protect people from the problems that can ensue, but also to support a growing industry.
Come on.
Number 10, sir. Well done. We want to put fans back at the heart of live events, and we want to make sure that more of the revenues come to the creative industries. That's why we're going to launch a consultation on the secondary ticket market soon. It actually says in the autumn on my piece of paper here, but I'm never quite sure when the autumn is, so I'm going with soon.
Mr Speaker, I'm very grateful for that answer, and I understand the need to look at secondary ticketing, but dynamic pricing is a contractual bargain between buyer and seller based on supply and demand. It actually gives us cheaper tickets as well as more expensive ones. Does he really want the government to get involved there? And look, Mr Speaker, I know that the Prime Minister wants everyone to be able to afford concert tickets, but what's wrong with the way that he gets them?
Well, now, Look, the truth is that dynamic pricing has many different forms, and some of them are good, and we don't want to interfere with that. For instance, early bird tickets benefit many people, or buying last-minute tickets for the theatre or whatever. So we're not going to interfere with that, but we are going to have a call for evidence about how that works in relation to live events. I would just say, in relation to ticket pricing, I looked this morning. If you want to buy... The real scandal about tickets is, if you want to buy some tickets for Coldplay, standing tickets these are, for Wembley next year on the 22nd of August 2025 from StubHub, face value £96.23. On StubHub, £17,000 633. That's the real scandal, and that's what we're going to deal with.
Right, we now head to Topicals. Bob Blackman. Bob Blackman. Joe Platt. Just...
Topical number 2, please, Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. After 14 years, this government has opened the books to find a legacy of violent indifference and neglect to arts and culture that has created serious challenges for our proud creative industries. I'm pleased to tell the House that this week the government's International Investment Summit put creative industries at the heart of our economic strategy. Thanks to the support of partners like Netflix, Universal Music and the Tate, we were able to welcome £63 billion of investment into the UK. Later today, I'll be launching a new covenant at Downing Street with our civil society partners to reset what had become a needlessly antagonistic relationship under the last government, and we look forward to working with those across the country in order to help fulfil this country's enormous potential.
Joe Platt.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Wigan and Leith Film Festival that took place last month was once again extremely successful. It's a fantastic opportunity to gather like-minded creative individuals from the local area to celebrate and showcase the up-and-coming talent from across the world. So this is just one example of the enriched film and TV culture that is so vibrant in my constituency. So I wholeheartedly welcome the government's announcement of tax reliefs to create jobs and boost our creative industries. But...
Odd. It's a topicals. It's meant to be very short and punchy. It's not a big long question, Joe. Secretary of State, can you pick, or Minister, can you pick the best out of it?
I completely agree with what she was about to say.
Which part? The first 3 minutes, the second. Right, let's go to the Shadow Secretary of State, Julia Lopez.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Now, the Secretary of State believes it's not good policy that counts, it's good vibes. The violent indifference that led to a booming creative sector is no longer. The culture war's over and we, the vanquished, submit ourselves for re-education along with the rest of the public. The problem is every DCMS sector tells us they want more than vibes. They need decisions and they want a budget that's going to deliver. So can the Secretary of State tell us, is she among the panicked ministers who's written to the Chancellor about her budget and spending asks, and which has she listed as her priority?
I'm not entirely sure what the vibes issue is, but can I just say to her that I don't need to write to the Chancellor because, unlike under the previous government, we have a very close relationship and we tend to pick up the phone when there are discussions that need to be had. I was very, very pleased to welcome, alongside the Chancellor, the Business Secretary and the Prime Minister this week, £63 billion worth of investment into the UK and to put creative industries at the heart of our economic strategy.
Julia Lopez.
Well, I spoke to some of those DCMS stakeholders who went to the Investment Summit and they came away worried. They see a government that absolutely milks their stardust, while all they hear is new taxes, new employment regulations, other departments riding roughshod over DCMS interests, and delays to decisions. So can she be specific? When she says she's putting rocket boosters under the creative industries, what does that mean in practice?
As I came to the House to announce last week, it means introducing an independent film tax credit, which her government talked about for several months and did absolutely nothing about. I have to say to her that after the legacy that her government has left, that has brought our proud country to its knees, it takes some brass neck to stand at this dispatch box and criticise this government. We are fixing the problems that her government created, and I think a little bit of humility might go a long way.
Peter Prinsley.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In March 1974, a Turkish Airlines jet crashed, flying from Paris to London. Over 400 people were killed. Amongst them were 19 members of the Bury St Edmunds Rugby Club, the greatest disaster to befall the town in living memory. This year, 60 cyclists cycled from Paris to Bury St Edmunds, raising £200,000 in their memory. Will the Secretary of State Join me in congratulating these bold cyclists.
I thank the Honourable Member for his important question. I'd like to congratulate the cyclists on completing their fantastic ride, the impressive sum of money they raised, and I'd like to pay particular tribute to Austin Cornish, the organiser of the ride, whose father died in that crash.
Richard Oldham.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. Women are those most often criminalised by non-payment of licence fee. The BBC Charter Review offers an opportunity for the government to look at this again. Will the government actually look at considering decriminalising non-payment of licence fee?
And I thank him for raising this important issue. We've been deeply concerned about the number of cases that have been brought to my attention since we took office about the women in particular who have fallen foul of this practice. I personally have had discussions with the BBC leadership about that, and obviously the Charter Review, which we intend to start early next year, offers us an opportunity to look at these issues in the round.
We're going to have to get through the questions. We've not much time. Olivia Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently visited the fantastic Shinfield Studios in the constituency of my honourable friend, the member for Earley and Woodley, and saw the huge value our creative industries can bring to my constituents. Can the Secretary of State tell me, please, what the inclusion of the creative industries in the industrial strategy and also the huge investment delivered at the Investment Summit last week will deliver for my constituents and constituencies like mine?
It's great to see her here, first of all, we want to make sure that more international movies, blockbusters, are made in the UK and increase that investment. And we think that the more sound stages that we have, we should be able to challenge Hollywood. But also, I want to make sure that every single child in this country can consider a career in the creative industries from whatever background they come from.
Josh Baberinda.
Speaker, I draw a member's attention to my register of interests. Eastbourne art galleries like the Towner and also Devonshire Collective Vault, which made my tie, contribute so much to our country and our town, but the sector face serious financial pressures. Will the Secretary of State meet with a delegation of art galleries and myself to discuss these?
I'd be very happy to meet with him. He makes a very good point. Some of our museums and galleries, we have hundreds of them around the country. Some of them have funding direct from Arts Council England. We want to talk with Arts Council England about how we can make sure there is more support for our museums and galleries. Some of it comes directly from our department, but I'm very happy to meet with him.
Reach up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I just advise that my sister works for Rugby League Cares? The Secretary of State will know that my constituency of Huddersfield is the birthplace of rugby league. The game at a professional and community level is really important to towns like mine, but it hasn't always had the support that it deserves. That Rugby Football League has produced a national communities facility strategy which states the level of funding that is needed for the game. So can I ask what steps the Secretary of State is taking to support the long-term investment in rugby league? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the question. We know just how important the work of Rugby Football League is in communities and have seen it firsthand, as I know you have, Mr. Speaker. It's one of the reasons why the RFL has received just under £1 million in funding from Sport England in the past financial year to help tackle inequalities and improve access, and I look forward to working the sport in the months and years ahead.
Forward to the increase as well. David Mundell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When mobile providers started to turn off the 2G and 3G network earlier this year, we were told that it would have no impact on existing services. But the experience in my constituency is the contrary, Mr. Speaker, particularly along the M74 motorway network. Will ministers investigate the impact of the switch off to date and make sure that necessary improvements are made to ensure that we do have a full network across the whole of the United Kingdom?
I think this is a hangover question from yesterday, from the telecoms questions, but he makes a very good point. I am very concerned. Well, one of the things that keeps me awake at night is worrying about what's going to happen to the transition for people with telecare devices that rely on the old PSTN network, and we are very keen to have a very safe transition. Exactly the same issues apply to 2G and 3G. Very happy to meet with him if that would help.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Southend East of Rochford, the Freight House site and the Kersal sit vacant. In times gone by, these are sites that my community have used greatly. We cannot allow buildings with such cultural capital and potential to sit vacant. Does the Minister agree that the regeneration of cultural sites like the Kersal and the Freight House is central to a prosperous community?
Can I very much offer him this government support? in that and welcome the work that he's doing to champion his community. I am currently working with the Deputy Prime Minister, the Secretary of State for Communities and Local Government, ahead of our publication of our forthcoming devolution plans to ensure that we're giving communities the tools to bring our proud heritage sites back into use and repurpose them for future generations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could I urge the Secretary of State and the ministerial team to take account of the value of the listed place of worship grant scheme, which is valuable to so many churches, particularly up and down the country, and not allow the Treasury to trim that back. It may expire at the end of March next year.
Yeah, hear, hear. Well, he knows very well that spending review issues are a matter for the Treasury, and let's see what comes out of that. But I've had lots of representation, and he makes a good point.
Chris Moore. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My beloved Aston Villa made their first appearance in the European Cup for over 40 years this season. However, fans were faced with £94 prices for tickets to see this first-of-a-generation moment. Would the Secretary of State agree with me? We need greater fan representation on football boards so that football remains accessible to all.
I'm pleased to offer him our support for that. The Football Governance Bill, which we intend to introduce shortly, is a significant advance in the protection of fans. We're working with the widest range of partners, and we hope to be able to command the cross-party support for that bill that we enjoyed before the election.
Richard Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. East Devon District Council is making available £207,000 for young people's sports facilities in Honiton. What can central government do to contribute to this initiative?
We've been pleased to announce £123 million worth of investment in grassroots sports facilities for the coming year. We know that demand is currently outstripped by the pace of being able to create those facilities, and we're absolutely determined as a government to work with him and with partners from across this House in order to ensure that we give our young people the facilities that they deserve.
Final question, Chris Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Historic England have recently announced £750 commitment to rebuild the beautiful Victorian arches at Madeira Terrace in my constituency, which the Minister visited with me in the election. It's a really welcome commitment, but these projects are expensive and they take time. So what can the Minister do to support heritage projects around the country, and will she come to Brighton with me and see the work in progress?
I think he may be getting me again, not least because we launched his election campaign at that very site, and it's a great delight to see that these are going to be sorted. And look, our heritage in our country is a key reason why so many people come to this country as international visitors. If we can get that mix of the historic and the modern right, I'm sure that we can challenge France for the number of international visitors that come to our country.
That completes those questions.